Hey, it's Florida. And unless you've been living in the Magic Kingdom, you've probably heard about the protests and controversy over changes to how our schools teach Black history.
We will never surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die.
Teaching Black history is required by Florida law, but we uncovered that the task force in charge of helping schools comply with that law has been shrinking for years.
We've got to get some additional blood on this task force.
And the state agency in charge of appointing new members has been avoiding our questions. All right, we're gonna pay our friends at the Florida Department of Education a visit. Let's see what's brewing. Hi, I'm Jenna Bourne, and I'm an investigative reporter at 10 Tampa Bay. If you're new here, welcome to our caffeine-fueled deep dive into issues that matter to you.
Stand up, white men!
Okay, so how did we get here? Earlier this year, Governor Ron DeSantis' administration blocked an advanced placement course on African American studies, saying the curriculum is being used to indoctrinate students into woke ideology.
This course on Black history, what's one of the lessons about? Queer theory. They have stuff about intersectionality, abolishing prisons. That's a political agenda.
They are saying, no, we'll have Black history. But for them to write Black history and decide Black history is a national standard that we cannot allow to happen.
Take a look at this Florida Department of Education training PowerPoint on library media and instructional materials, dated January 2023. It says factors to consider include avoiding unsolicited theories that may lead to student indoctrination. Last year, the governor signed the Individual Freedom Act, also known as the Stop Woke Act, which, among other things, made changes to Florida's law requiring that students learn about Black history. It added that classroom instruction and curriculum may not be used to indoctrinate or persuade students to a particular point of view. That law also says the Education Department may seek input from the Commissioner of Education's African American History Task Force on Black history standards and curriculum.
We don't have time to waste.
You know, this task force, the one created to help schools comply with the state law requiring them to teach Black history. And we've uncovered that task force is shrinking. I mean, really shrinking.
So we've got to get support from your office to get some people on this task force.
We traveled to Tallahassee for this African American History Task Force meeting. It might look packed, but the truth is only 2 voting members of the task force are actually here. Dr. Brenda Walker and Vice Chair Dr. Samuel Wright. Most of the other people in this room are Department of Education employees. Oh yeah, and us, the only members of the public who showed up to this public meeting on Florida A&M University's campus. The meeting notice had the wrong building and room number, so we may or may not have wound up locked in a stairwell beforehand.
We need you to come save us.
But only for about 5 minutes.
Anybody out there?
Anyway, Dr. Wright says this is the smallest number of members they've ever had at a meeting. And although the group's website shows 7 people on the task force members page, only 4 of them are actually voting members. Dr. Walker and Dr. Wright, who you saw in the meeting, and Dr. Donna Austin and Tracy Oliver, who were not there. As the task force's principal investigator, Dr. Bernadette Kelly Brown doesn't get to vote. Congresswoman Frederica Wilson and State Senator Geraldine Thompson are emerita members. Those are legacy roles, so they can participate in the group's activities, but they can't vote. We used an internet archiving tool called the Wayback Machine to look at snapshots of the task force's website over the past several years. In December 2019, the site showed there were 13 members. Again, now there are 7, and only 4 can vote. No chairperson, only a vice chair. That's him.
We've lost quite a few along the way.
What happened?
I guess they just could no longer serve or whatever, so they just just falling off and resigning for other purposes, other reasons.
People on the task force tell us they've been vetting and recommending new members to the Florida Department of Education, but the education commissioner hasn't appointed anyone in years. For weeks, we called and emailed 7 people within the Department of Ed more than a dozen times about the group's dwindling membership. We sent questions and public records requests and requests to interview the education commissioner. I'm calling again to follow up on our interview request with Manny Diaz. No one got back to us.
You think they'll be happy to see us?
So we showed up at their office in Tallahassee.
We're checking to see if Commissioner Manny Diaz is here today.
Security had me talk to his assistant on the phone.
No, I haven't heard from him yet. That's why we're here.
She told me she'd see if Diaz could talk the next week. Spoiler alert, that didn't happen. At the task force meeting the next day, Department of Education spokesperson Cassie Palelis didn't want to talk.
Is there a reason we haven't been able to get any answers?
This is a work group meeting, a task force meeting, and so we're not taking questions at this time.
Well, when are you taking questions? Because we've been emailing you and calling you with questions for weeks. When can we expect to hear back?
We'll take a look at your questions. Thank you.
Okay, let's try another person I've been reaching out to. Cindy Huffman, the liaison between the Department of Ed and the task force.
The new bylaws together. I've been trying and they haven't been responding to me either.
Dr. Ani, I have to refer you to that.
I'm sorry?
I need to refer you to Dr. Ani.
Okay, let's try Dr. Ani.
If you could provide them to the communications office.
I certainly have been for weeks.
Yes, and we'll be happy to follow up.
They didn't.
I'm getting grayer and grayer, and we need to get some answers.
During the meeting, Huffman said she would send the task force a list of prospective new members nominated by the Department of Education and people currently on the task force the following week. That didn't happen either.
Why does it matter that the number of members of the task force is dwindling?
We have phenomenal educators throughout the state of Florida in districts who are doing phenomenal things, and we need their wisdom and their advice to how we need to advance this work. And so that's why we want to make sure we get districts particularly that are setting examples to be involved in what we're trying to get done here.
Speaking of districts setting an example, I wanted to bring in a special guest for this episode. I have here with me fellow investigative reporter here at 10 Tampa Bay, Emerald Morrow. And Emerald, you've been looking into these Florida school districts that have achieved this exemplary status when it comes to teaching Black history.
Yeah, hey Jenna, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Glad to be here. Yeah, this Florida law is pretty comprehensive. It's been on the books since the mid-90s, so about 30 years, and it actually requires districts to teach both African and African American history. So again, even though this has been around for a long time and has all of these requirements, the task force says this law is not as effective as it could be.
Out of the 67 districts, there are only 11 who have been deemed exemplary.
So just 11. 2 of the districts are in our area, Pinellas and Hillsborough.
So how do districts earn this exemplary status?
So it's something that they have to apply for, not something that comes automatically to them. And they have to meet 6 different criteria around things like curriculum, professional development, university and community collaboration, as well as school board approval. Now, another thing to add is that Hillsborough County also has its own African American History Task Force, where they work really hard to try to make sure that students get these really important lessons. On top of that, Hillsborough and Pinellas both offer specialized courses in African American history, and some of these classes even have honors distinctions. It sounds like what you guys consider exemplary should be standard.
It should be. I agree, but it hasn't been.
How are school districts held accountable?
Well, accountability, I think that's always a tricky question, isn't it? Well, the State Department of Education actually has a portal for districts to submit their reports on how they are teaching Black history in the classrooms. Are you satisfied with what you've seen in the portal?
It has pretty much checked a box, so it's nothing, no documented citations or evidence that is being done. It's just ask the question, do you do this, do you do that? And you could say yes, no.
So no accountability?
No accountability.
You can find a link to Emerald's full story in the video notes below. How would you describe the current state of Black history education in Florida?
Well, it's sort of like at a dead end when we look at the message we're getting from the governor's office versus what we're getting from the Commissioner of Education's office. There's a disconnect because one group is saying one thing and another group is saying something else. We need to come together so we can make some things happen in the state of Florida.
Thanks for watching What's Brewing. Subscribe to 10 Tampa Bay's channel and add the What's Brewing playlist to your library so you don't miss an episode. And I'll see you next time.